In the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. You have the agenda in front of you. Do we have any changes to the agenda? If not, we would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Motion by Robin, second by Rick to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Agenda is approved. Guests in open forum, is there anybody here to address the council tonight? All right, we'll move on to committee reports, presentations, and awards. Start off with the Excel Advisory Board.
Excel Advisory Board, we met last Friday. We had representatives from the plant, county, city. I think that was it from those three. Yeah, you weren't there either. And just sharing of just upcoming projects that were coming up between all the entities.
All right, any questions for Rick? Personnel Committee.
Personnel, we met last week. We discussed a couple things. We kind of revisited the employee recognition policy to see what we wanted to do with that. We also had discussions about the possibility of a police sergeant, which we'll have ongoing conversations about that. We talked about there's gonna be new city hall hours coming into effect here, which is gonna be 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then 7 a.m. to 1:30 on Fridays. So just kind of give everyone a heads up that that's gonna be the new hours. Because we've had really good, feedback on the 7 a.m. openings, so people can get here before work. So we're gonna keep that as is. That's it.
All right, any questions for Becky? All right, Police Committee.
Police Committee met on August 11th. We talked about, also talked about the sergeant position, had some more discussion on that. We also talked about a potential, little bit of the e-bike ordinance and just kind of talking through that and what we'd like to see there. Discuss the pursuit policy, some potential updates to that. And we were just talking about, the sergeant position and just hiring. And just an update on some of the upcoming community engagements that PD will be participating in.
All right, any questions for Rick? Park and Rec, I think we have one update.
Just one update. Pleasant Valley Park equipment is going to be delayed for the install until early September.
Okay, so it's still coming, just gonna be a couple weeks.
Yep.
All right, any questions on that? If not, we'll move on to the Fire Board.
Fire Board, we met just last night. We accepted a $5,000 donation from the Becker Lions, so thank you to the Lions for that. And we talked a little bit more about a fund balance policy, which is something we've had at the city here for a while, but implementing that at the Fire Board as well. So we had a lot more good discussion on that. And then we'll be having a what we call it, an accompaniment parade. What was the where they use the
Escort policy.
Escort policy, yep. So still in the works on that, but that'll hopefully be coming up here in time for all of the state championships that'll be coming home to Becker this fall. So.
All right, questions for Rick? All right, let's move on to Administrator and Staff Reports, second quarter financials. Mr. Ebensteiner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Opportunity here to present the second quarter financials. So just want to give a snapshot of mainly the general fund, a couple special revenue funds, and then the enterprise fund. So I'll jump right in and can answer any questions. So on the general fund side, tax revenues through June are at 37%, so as expected. So as a reminder, We do receive a portion of our settlement in June, and then an additional 15% in July, and then the remaining 50% in November and December. So 37% is right in line with expectations. Additional revenue items to note: licenses and permits are lagging slightly at 39%. Charges or services for the community center are strong at 54% of budget. And as noted in prior updates, interest earnings are strong. Definitely a very good interest rate environment. Currently at 103% of budget at $83,000. So overall revenues are at 39% of overall budget through the 50%, but we did get that additional 15% of tax revenues in early July. So good there. And then general fund expenditures at 45% of budget through half of the year. So as a reminder, that does include the property and casualty and workers' comp. So some of those larger expenditures early in the year as well. So expenditures are trending well. EDA fund, their revenues are tied to the same constraints as the general fund property tax levy. That's a separate EDA levy, so that is entirely received in July. So we did receive our first half settlement for EDA in July. And then really all the revenue in the ADA are primarily, most of it is from that Rockefeller philanthropy grant, which we have spent most of that. And that's why you'll see the expenditure side, we're at 67% of budget through half of the year, but a lot of that is driven by just wrapping up a lot of those grant proceeds that were spent in 2025. Golf fund having a great year. Revenues are very similar and slightly ahead of 2024. Just a little over 1.76 million, or 55% of budget. So having a strong year on the revenue side. And expenditures there as well. Item to note: property and casualty and workers' comp. So some of those large payments are paid in the first half of the year. And then overall expenditures in the golf fund are at 49% of budget, with just a little over 200,000 of income through the second quarter. Water fund revenues consistent with typical second quarter usage, slightly ahead of 24. Expenses are at 39%. There have some additional capital planned for later this year, so you'll see that coming up. And then the wastewater fund, on the domestic wastewater, revenues are once again consistent. There definitely just tends to be more consistent, just the way the billing works. So we're at 51% through June on the domestic wastewater side. And then expenses there include that significant capital spend. So some of the items you've seen Chris already touch on and bring forward, and you'll see some additional capital items here through 2025. And then on the industrial wastewater revenue side, tracking as expected, revenues are at 52% and expenses at 42%. So with that, Budget and Finance had reviewed the June financials, and just bringing this as an information, but can answer any questions, but no action on this item.
Anybody have any questions for Mark?
Nope.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have a call for a public hearing for easement vacations. Mr. Sanders, Resolution 2561.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. As part of the replat that Bogart Peterson is working on to facilitate the land exchange with Todd Potter, there are a number of easements that need to be vacated, otherwise they'd end up going through the middle of lots. So this would, under statute, a public hearing is required for the vacation of any of these. And so we would be seeking for a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2561 to set a public hearing for September 2nd at 5 p.m. on the proposed vacation of these easements. And they're legally described. You can also see the exhibit in the packet with the orange lines where those would get vacated. With that, I'll answer any questions on that one. It's pretty straightforward, fairly simple.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion on Resolution 2561 to call for a public hearing on easement vacations for the September 2nd council meeting at approximately 5 p.m.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Rick, second by Mike. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. That motion carries.
Thank you.
And you're up again.
All right. This one, tonight is a waiver of a right to repurchase for a lot that's currently owned by Jim Hughesby. So this is a lot that's on the corner of, it's north of Potter and west of the Becker Furniture World warehouse in the industrial park. Back in 1999, the city had entered a development agreement with them to build out, I think it's 3 lots in total. One of those lots, if you recall, somewhere on council at the time, we actually had done this previously, told the right to repurchase or waive that right. So we do have a right to repurchase these lots that were part of this expansion that Becker Furniture World, should they build out in a certain time period. Mr. Hughesby hasn't entered into a contract yet, but he is negotiating with a potential buyer on this lot. And the buyer would be expected to, they would anticipate constructing a new building on the property at some point in the future, but without this being waived, they can't proceed. We don't really have a need for it. There are some stormwater pieces on there, but we've talked to Public Works and those would get navigated through as part of the proposal of the development process on the property. So the proposed resolution that you see in your packet, that was actually based on the previous one that was drafted by the city attorney that waives the city's right to repurchase the property. One thing to note, that if they don't develop or something falls through, there is language that would, that right to repurchase would kick back in so that the city could control where that goes in the future. So with that, we're seeking a motion and a second approving resolution 2563, tolling the right to repurchase on Lot 1, Block 1 of Becker Furniture World, First Edition. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Have we talked to the Hughesbys at all about that provision, about the 3-year? Okay, so.
Yeah, they're aware of the right to repurchase, and the one, you're talking about the one in here.
The one where after 3 years of no activity, it would
I
go
think,
back on.
I don't know if we mentioned that it was to them 3 years specifically, but they're aware, I think, that it would kick in, but it would be on the buyer, to do that. So the buyer, I think we can make Jim aware of it specifically, but I think he's aware that we would exercise the right to repurchase. I don't know if we told him the 3 years
How does that get worded,
specifically.
that something would be not on there, but on there, but, I mean, does it get added on there since the beginning? It just says if nothing happens within 3
Yep.
years, so it
So
gets
it
added
started
from
in
the beginning.
1999 when they signed the development agreement. It's been there since that time frame. Nothing's ever happened on that lot, nothing's ever happened on the property. A lot of it was used for storm sewer for the Furniture World warehouse. But again, it's been in there since the beginning, so this is just waiving that. It would kick back in should something not occur. But we'll make him explicitly aware of the 3-year time frame.
And Jacob and I have been working pretty extensively with the purchasers, and I think it's gonna be great to have this group here and to keep them here, so I'm very confident it's gonna move forward.
And then one property that Jim was involved with previously was the GNM. When GNM bought it, this very same process had to be gone through, so Jim's been through this before.
All right, any other questions for Jacob? If not, we're looking for a motion on resolution 2563 to toll the repurchase right on Lot 1, Block 1, Becker Furniture World, First Edition.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Robin, a second by Becky. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanders, again.
Pull up a pedestal
Ender
chair.
show.
There's no wall to back into, so no paint tonight. The next item that we have is, it seems pretty thick, but there's a reason. Chapter 4, currently, we've gone through some edits, so now that the Unified Development Ordinance has been adopted, we waited on some of these to bring them forward, just because they're related to that. Chapter 4 has been one of the things we've explored as staff, to simplify a few things and clarify a few things on survey requirements in particular. So the edits would align it with current building code regulations, and it would make it so that there's some things that say as amended rather than having to go through and adjust this all the time. or they reference statute. So for example, exemptions of building permits, like a 7-foot fence, so if statute changes, we don't have to go back through and change them, we just say as amended, which is a lot easier and a lot simpler. The permit process, so the edits aim to enhance some of the flexibility with the permit process and reduce some arduous requirements on those. Really, like residential, a new build would require a survey, or if there's something that, like an addition that drastically changes the topography somehow, you know, it comes down and they're building walls, that would require a survey. Outside of that, if it doesn't do those, then most of the time it's not gonna require one. And that makes some sense, because the survey is really for grading. It does verify the setbacks, but a lot of times if they're far enough away from the property line and they're meeting those anyway, it doesn't make a lot of sense to require them to do a survey on an addition or something like that if it's not impacting drainage. So it'd really be just new builds and additions. And then industrial, commercial survey requirements would be there, or civil plans for new builds, and any additions that, same thing, impact drainage or topography. The other part of this is we would, we've had some conversations with the county about our SSTS, so our subsurface sewage treatment systems. So those regulations, that's a septic system for the public. It's a long-term SSTS. It's just a septic system. We have a few in the city, but we don't have a lot. And since I've been here, the only one that I can remember coming in is really the ag building that is the University of Minnesota Research Building that was built on Excel property. Anything that's over 100 feet away from a sewer or water main is allowed to have a septic system, but we don't have a lot of properties that present that opportunity, so we just don't get very many of them. We've had conversations with the county. Statute talks about this as well. Given the low volume, we're recommending that Sherburne County take over doing SSTS regulations. And it would transfer the authority for them doing permitting. They would coordinate with us, obviously, but we would provide them all the information they need, SSTS. And we, again, like I say, I've seen one of these since I've been here, but it would get a lot of regulations out of our code. The county does this, it's kind of all the time, so it makes some sense for them to do it. So they would be responsible for permitting, regulation, and inspection. The one thing to note in here is, should the Chapter 4 edits, should council approve of those tonight, there is a formal agreement, that's the next item on the agenda, but there would be a formal contract with Sherburne County to manage the SSTS systems as well. And I'll touch on that in the next item. So with that, we're seeking for a motion in a second, approving ordinance 296 second series, and approving the ordinance amendments, and then a motion in a second approving ordinance 296 second series for publishing. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Jacob? Not, we're looking for a motion to approve ordinance 296 second series, amending chapter 4, construction licensing permits and regulation in the city code.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Rick, a second by Robin. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. That motion carries, and then we're gonna need a motion to publish the series summary.
And I'll make that motion as well.
Second.
So we have a motion again by Rick, seconded by Robin to publish the series summary. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. That is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Mr. Sanders, one last time.
Thank you.
Not that it's a bad thing.
Yeah. Just sit down. This last one is that contract that was mentioned. So there's a draft contract in this for Sherburne County. They provided this contract. You'll see it in the second portion after the resolution there is an exhibit. The red lines just show you what amendments that we proposed, and I did hear back from them, and they were okay with all of these amendments. So really, you're approving what's in here. Some of the things that we proposed were just making sure that it wasn't more regulations that they were taking over than what we wanted them to, and then just some clarifications on. There was one piece in particular that it said upon termination, the city would be solely responsible for all administration of them within corporate. I mean, that would also mean if they terminated it, and we wanted that out because we want it just to be if we terminate and take it back, that's all we want. Otherwise, it just stays with the county. So we also consulted with the attorney, and they kind of agreed with those edits as well, that for us to make sure that we don't end up with it, we remove that clause, and then we would also repeal any of the existing SSTS regulations, which you just approved of, getting rid of those. We would also let the MPCA know about this so that they're aware that the city is no longer going to be doing SSTS regulations. So with that, we are seeking a motion and a second, adopting resolution 2564, which would approve the subsurface sewage treatment systems contract with Sherburne County. And I'll note that that resolution that's in there is a draft resolution that would go to the county board. That's something that was provided. We asked for a couple edits to it, but that would go to the county board should you approve tonight.
So one quick question, if, I know we don't do a lot of these, but if we
Yeah.
did, would the applicant need to go to the county then for the permit?
Yep, so they would go through the county, and we'll update the procedures and kind of how we communicate that with people so that if they did need to go through something again, that it's pretty clear. But yeah, they would go to the county for that permit.
Okay. Any other questions for Jacob? I guess we deleted the ordinance, so we probably shouldn't have something in place. Be kind of important. All right, we'll look for a motion to adopt resolution 2564, approving the subsurface sewage treatment systems contract with Sherburne County.
I'll make that a motion.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Mike, second by Becky. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Motion is carried.
Thank you very much.
Is that 4 motions and we didn't spend any money?
Yep.
Well, that was pretty cool. All right, next
Get
up,
out before, I'll get out before you have to.
next up, Mr. Knudsen with some community center roof repairs.
Here comes
Making up
Phil.
for it now.
Now we gotta spend money.
I'll make up for a little bit of lost time there, so. Thank you, Mayor and Council. And in front of you, we're looking for some roof improvements over at the community center. If you recall, when we looked at our CIP planning for the future years for the community center, one of the caveats that we put in there was to try and get some roof work done this year so we could take the full roof replacement of that facility. It's for the most part, it's all original to the building. We'd like to kind of flatten that out and replace it over roughly 3 to 5 years, starting in 2027. But in order to do that, we need to do some work yet this year. Our current CIP for the community center only has an HVAC unit for the library that's in process. That will actually get set sometime here in September is the plan. The budget on that is about $50,000 under what we had planned in our CIP. So looking to use some of those funds, we worked with 3 different roofing contractors. I'm not familiar with next gen commercial exteriors. Troy Dawson, our facilities guy, is very well versed with them. He did about $1.6 million replacement when he was at his last employer with these folks. I did reach out to a few other contacts, have good things to say about them, and Troy was very up and up about these folks. So McDowell bid it as well as Delco bid it as well. They were a little bit higher, and one of them had a scheduling conflict that couldn't get to us this year. Next Gen has assured us that they can get to the work and get this taken care of in a timely fashion this year. So I didn't bring, I think I put it in your packet, but the detailed report, they sectioned out the roof, so I think we come up with 7 sections that we can come through so we can identify those. And over the 3-year process of a prolonged fix, we would just take kind of set dollar limits and just pick the worst roofs to start with and then work our way through that, like I said, over the 3 to 5 years in doing so. So with that tonight, I am looking for movement on resolution 2565 to offer the project to Next Gen Exteriors in amount not to exceed $24,893, which is their bid plus 10%. On remodels, I always get a little leery. Sometimes you open something up and find something you didn't expect, so we try to put a little bit of contingency money in there. But with that, I can stand for any questions if you have any.
All right, any questions for Phil? Got to fix roofs? So we're looking for a motion on resolution 2565, allowing staff to have Next Gen Exteriors perform the roof repairs at the BCC.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Becky, a second by Rick. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. LaRude and the consent agenda.
Mayor Colbinger, city council members, items for approval or adoption on tonight's consent agenda include the revised hiring and termination report, payment of the bills as presented, the August 6, 2025 city council meeting minutes, city hall hours effective September 2nd, a new massage therapist license, Resolution 25-60 approving the contract for commissioning services with Dunham Associates for the Police Department City Hall project. Approved temporary consumption and display permit for the Becker Lions for their 50th anniversary celebration at Snuffy's Landing on September 25th. Partial pay request number 13 in the amount of $99,659.73 to Apex Construction Group for the Police Department City Hall project. And approved final pay request in the amount of $26,081.61 to OMG Midwest for the 2024 street improvement project. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions on the consent agenda? If not, we would entertain a motion to approve that.
We'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Robin, a second by Rick. Is there any further discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. That motion is carried. We have anything else that needs to come before council tonight? Hearing nothing, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second thing.
We got a motion by Mike, a second by Rick. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, state no. Meeting's adjourned at 5:27. Thank you, everybody. And we have a couple minute break and then we'll roll into the exec session.
Actually, see that's connected to the cable, but just make sure you change it back to the type road. Go on.
Dolphin Street CIP, okay.
You got it?
La la la. Beautiful.
Ooh, glossy even.
Thank you, Josh.
The amount of spam calls lately. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, I've been getting slammed with spam calls.
Man.
48 hours.
It's kind of creepy because it's almost like they know where you've been too.
Spam calls.
It's creepy. Do you have Life 360?
Yes.
I heard that kind of came out, like they can tell where you've been.
No, I don't have
Will they
that.
hack Life 360?
So if you could look into that for me, Rick, if that's what really happened, thanks. Which would make sense because like I was just in Alexandria. Now I'm getting all these Alexandria like spam calls. I'm curious.
No, I've been getting targeted ones lately too, where they're hitting our company specifically. So they're saying they're from our help desk and they've got a hold of some of our numbers and they're like, hey, we're from your help desk. We need this password or whatever. And
Those are all,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Are you just getting bombed with them?
yeah, I always do.
No, but this is like some like major, like it's been going on, like.
Trying to borrow me, loan money to me, they're
Oh, that's nice. Be like, thanks. I'll take it.
trying to sell me,
auto insurance.
yeah. You block the number and they just call from a different number.
I like when the British ones call sometimes, the +44
Yep.
international area code or whatever. No.
No.
I always pick them up and hang
And
up
hang
so
up
that I
right away.
can't leave a voicemail.
Right. Well, all their voicemails will just be like, goodbye.
Yeah.
That's all you get on your voicemail. I have no idea.
No, ever since the,
answer a phone call I don't know anymore. I got copies, too many newspapers,
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
catch you off guard.
You know what that's about?
Nope.
Neither do we.
It looks like a
Possibly
pond.
hotel,
That looks like ponds.
apartments,
Okay, that's what I thought I had heard.
potentially. I mean, we
I was wondering if
rezoned
that
it,
was the same.
they wanted to rezone it,
I remember that.
for about eight,
So
yeah,
that's the same lot though, right?
yeah.
Okay, it is. I was just wondering if I was on the same.
There's not a pond on it.
Not the one we talked about tonight.
Oh, no.
Well,
Yeah, the one we talked about tonight is over in the
It
industrial
was
park.
across. Okay, because I'm like looking at it
We had-
like, oh, okay,
that's
so
number
that makes
one.
sense.
Yeah,
It will always
Okay.
be number
over by their warehouse.
Yes. Gotcha. Okay, that's just getting all like, what?
I know, I had to look at first too, cause I'm looking at the
So I
street.
looked at the map. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And the hockey association to sell them at
The
Normal.
house is here, down here.
Yeah, but then where's the pond I gotta get over? Was that that?
That's number 8, or 17. This is 18th hole. $8. This is 10 green.
Alright. Getting close.
Yeah, let's do this. Anxiously.
I can't wait.
It's 5:31. We will call the executive session of August 19th to order. And we're starting out with the golf and CIP budget staffing.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. Mayor and council, tonight, we're gonna be reviewing the streets and the Pebble Creek CIP. So as we kind of work through all of our budgeting process, these are the last two detailed CIPs to review and get the detail into your hands. So those two items will be what we look at. The preliminary column that you see here that's boxed in, this is a summary of what we reviewed so far. And then the two kind of highlighted lines are the two that we're going to look at tonight that you haven't seen. So we'll round that out tonight, and you'll see on here also that we have the debt service levy. The debt service levy numbers that are on here are really just a result of the bonds that we're already committed to paying, and so we're presenting those numbers to you. That's what we will need to levy in order to make our bond payments next year. So if you look down, I put a subtotal on here for the CIP and the debt service levy. And we're looking at an increase in the levy of about $13,000 to $14,000 next year if we move forward levying what we have reviewed so far and what we reviewed tonight for CIP. So just to kind of give you a feel for where we are on those categories as we look at the details. As a reminder, the next step for budgeting after tonight, on September 2nd, we will bring a summary of all the budget detail, including any changes that you may want or input that you have provided to us by that time. We'll take a look at that, get your preliminary feedback as we prepare for that preliminary levy meeting. September 16th is when we anticipate that will come to council. A little bit later than we would have liked and we did last year, just based on the timing of when the state Department of Revenue is getting back to us with valuation for the utility. The utility did contest their valuation, and that process will take until September 5th at the very earliest for us to get data back. So just give ourselves a little more time before we commit to a preliminary levy. So that's the reason for the timing change on what we're expecting to see there. But you'll see a roll-up on September 2nd, and then you'll have an opportunity to look at the preliminary levy with all the tax data on the 16th of September. And then in October, of course, that's not the end, we'll work on the enterprise fund budget. So just give you an update of where we're going. So with that, Phil and Josh are gonna lead the detailed review of streets and Pebble Creek, and we're gonna start with streets. And so I will turn that over to Phil, and then we snuck this beautiful slide that you've seen before in here to kind of kick off the streets CIP. Oh, I can't quite get it. All right, sorry, Phil. Thought I had it all teed up for you.
Just me, I get close.
I was gonna have to make it smaller after all.
You have printed versions too? We do. Go old standard. Okay.
We're good.
That's good. Streets is a bit of a bouncing ball, so we'll kind of have to follow along with it. We're gonna focus really exclusively on 2026, even though we've got 27, 28 dialed in, and we've got all of the numbers that you see here. I went through and updated all of our streets out to 2032 with this year's construction dollars. So we're dealing with real numbers in the future as well, because we're using that for that 10-year balance that they're working on as far as the overall levy. So we're also.
This year's construction dollars and then an inflator?
Yes, and then we'll work, I do that typically every year. I try to come through there and just see some years we're up, like concrete's down this year. Bituminous is really favorable this year as well. Not crazy, so I didn't want to get crazy with it, but as we work with Lori on any of those escalators as she comes out there, use an inflationary factor in the out years. So we'll look at that. So while we look at 27, so just, it's a little bit of a precursor. We work through, this is the city map of all of our streets. Okay, so we try to identify all of our streets and go through. There's a MnDOT scoring system that we go through. I have Chris and Corey go through and do the preliminaries. I do my own, so I can look at what those guys are doing. I can compare them with that, and then we introduce our engineers to it as well. So we get favorable all the time. We're just looking at these things, and then we'll do it again in the spring, because sometimes our streets fall apart in the winter time. Central almost disintegrated over the winter. So anyhow. So we'll get into this. There's a couple of caveats here because it's there's a couple of projects that we're looking at. The first one that Lori put up here is Jade Street to 35th. So there are two existing streets on the east side of town over in River Bend area. We went out there. The reason we're looking at this, we're kind of looking for low-hanging fruit for development, if we can. So on our as-builts that we've got, we show that there's 4 served lots south of Jade Street that are privately held, but there's no road there right now. There's no curb, there's no sidewalk. Conversely, on 35th, if we move that a little bit further north, there's a catch basin there, there's a storm structure and a sanitary structure in the proposed roadway that have never been built. So, like I said, the water staff went out there, found the water services. So if we were to do this portion of it, we'd do the curb and gutter, the sidewalk, the street. You could have 3 lots that you could work with from the city that we would own, that you could plat and sell those lots, and then you could work with the owner of the other parcel off south of Jade. Like I said, there's 4 service lines there, both sanitary and water. So you could work out an assessment with them to get some of that money back and work that out on a deferred basis or favorable interest, no interest or whatever when they're ready to go. I would think based on the building that's out there, they would look to do something on a plat, just even for those 4 lots to get something rolling. So we kept that exclusive. This will be like a one-time shot if council approves this to go forward. It would be here. We would use the funds. It would likely come from future improvements or assessment earnings. And then it would be gone. It would just live in the River Bend development then. We wouldn't keep it as a separate line item on this CIP. Okay, so we isolated that because the dollar call out based on the quotes here, we put that dollar amount in there because if we move forward with this project, it wouldn't come from the street CIP. It would be a future improvement transfer or whatever the magic is that they do to make the money work out. So we would just work in concert with them. So that is a separate call out, but it would be called out to do with our street projects in 2026. Okay. The core of the street projects, Hillcrest and Pineview, off of River Street, are 2 that are in tough shape. They've been around for 40 years. So we're recommending to do those as well. Those are rural sections. There's no storm over there. There's no curb and gutter. We're not proposing to do that. Again, we have no right of way to widen those out unless we start cannibalizing people's front yards, and they don't like that. So we would plan to keep it the same way. The other area that we would look to do or recommend for next year would be the, over by Prairie Village and finish up that neighborhood over there. Martin Drive, Laura Circle, Luann Drive, Carroll Drive, from where we left off, from Abbey to Luann, and then Abbey and Twyla as well. Kind of work in that neighborhood to get it done. Those do rank as threes on our list, so it does make some sense to do that. What we would do on this one, though, is I will probably pull out if we don't know where our grant is at. If you remember, you guys made that grant application for utility extensions along Luann to bring it to Edgewood. If that grant goes through or we're selected there, in all likelihood, I'll pull out Laura Circle. So Laura Circle is just a dual cul-de-sac road. It's a short stretch. And then Luann Drive. To me, I would kind of beef up a project that we would do when we extend Luann Drive and keep those in there and do them at the same time. It just makes some sense, kind of the economy of scale, to put them in there so they're not jumping all over the place. But I would recommend we would do that when we do those extensions. And depending on when that word comes in on that award, you may not have time to be able to do it in 2026. It may have to be could be a second half bid project, or it would be a 2027 project, depending on when that comes through. So just a couple of things we'll play around with that. The big thing that's on here that we've been talking about for some time, we're actually doing the engineering work on it, is the Edgewood Street. We're doing full engineering from 23 all the way to Highway 10 to do the whole structure. I met with Randy this morning and talked through it. They hope about 3 weeks from now, we'll have a lot of the base work down, so we'll kind of know what that road profile is going to look like. What we can do with MSAS as far as the road width, the right-of-ways, the trail, the whole thing going on with that. The concern that we have right now is we're factoring this as an MSAS road, right? It qualifies, it's a collector street, it's a minor collector. We can use it, it checks all the boxes. The concern is we don't have room to expand our right-of-way over there because it's kind of blocked in. Again, we don't want to be cannibalizing that, don't want to put you guys in a position to say we're going to come in at eminent domain and take away right-of-way for a trailer or what have you. So depending on what we can do, it could be a combination of speed, reducing the speed, which we have the authority to do that.
What's that? The authority to do that?
Set our speeds within, yeah, it doesn't have to go, MnDOT doesn't have to approve that right now, but we have to go through a process of justification for that. So, yeah, I think the lowest we can set that is if we go to 25, there's restrictions around us getting to 25 if it's outside of a school zone, but we can look at a 30-mile-an-hour road section over there.
What, did that change, or?
A year ago, 2 years ago.
Okay, so it's recently?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You're like,
Yep.
I'm like,
Just worked, just as a quick sidebar, I just had a meeting this morning with transportation engineer with SEH. That's where Randy and I started our conversation. But working on those criterias and what it would do, like we talked about, with somebody calls in, I want a stop sign, I want a crosswalk, I want, traffic calming in my neighborhood. We're working on that to get it all set out there. So we'll have a really good diagram. They sent me a bunch of information this afternoon to look through. So, but we're looking at that with this one as well, because MnDOT's, or the MSAS standards change a little bit when you decrease the speed and what the road widths can be and what we're looking at there.
Is it because it's a MSAS road that we're allowed to change that, or did that completely, I guess, because we were told for the longest time, we can't touch it, it's gotta be a MnDOT thing.
Right. So it's and I don't know if it's because we hit the 5,000, or it's just in general that cities have the authority now. You don't have to go to MnDOT to a 30-mile-an-hour zone. School zones are a little bit different.
But we just couldn't go out there tomorrow and put signs up. We have to have justifications.
Correct.
We have to,
Yep.
there's a process to
Yes.
do it, so.
Yes, and that's why we're trying to get this, when somebody calls and asks, we're trying to get protocols in place.
Yep.
That doesn't, just corner you guys into doing these things, but it's we're gonna try and simplify it to a really nice flow chart. Somebody calls and asks, or a question comes up, we go here. If yes, go here. If no, we're done, and then just keep moving. And it'll likely start at the staff level and then go through Public Works to use the committee level and then come to a work session to get there. But because this is in the design phase right now, we're looking at all of our opportunities out on Edgewood as to what we can do to make sure that we can keep the separated trail and still build and use MSAS dollars for that. Because with MSAS, we can use that for the trail as well, because it's part of the project. The other part that Josh will touch on a little bit with Pebble Creek, this is where it gets a little bit muddy as we start to really introduce a lot of things here. Water control on Edgewood has been a problem since that was put in. The reality is the majority of that ditch was put in or majority of the trail was put in the bottom of the ditch. And there's no drainage over there. So especially from Peter, heading east towards Edgewood, it's horrible. And what we're likely gonna have to do is create some sort of a collection system, an elongated ditch within the limited easement that we've got that would be hard piped and run it down Edgewood. What we're proposing to do is to come under 23, there's a culvert there already, but potentially come under 23 and then put that water into hole number 10. And then there's a spillway, or we'd enlarge the spillway on number 10, that if we overflow that, if there's a major rain, it would come into 10, it would overflow and fill in 4. And then 4 fills our creek and runs down to our irrigation pond. So we could do that as part of this project, or a portion of it could be part of this project. And I've checked with engineering and the state as well, and they said, yep, you're conveying water as part of the project, and you could do this. So we don't know exactly to what extent, but you could hold that water on the golf course, save water that we're pumping out of the ground, and use it for our irrigation system. So it's a win-win all the way around, and it actually makes that trail much more usable as well. So a lot of working and interacting between streets and the course and what that's going to look like. But Josh will get into that a little bit more as we start looking at some of the ponds and the work to be done on Pebble Creek as well. So the hard part here is Edgewood may not be a candidate for, Randy's pretty comfortable that he thinks we can get there using MSAS on Edgewood. But I just want to make sure that you guys are aware that we may not, because we want to keep a separated trail, and we only have so much right of way or room to work. And if we need to do that, then the standards that we can build our streets to are a little bit different than the MSAS standards. So if we build to the standards that we would say on 3rd Street or even 1st Street, we could do that. We would just have to fund it out of our CIP, and then we'd have to pivot immediately to say, okay, what could we use that MSAS funding for? Hancock is one, 3rd Street is one, 1st Street is one. So we just have to scramble this up a little bit. So
As the MSAS is partially a loan, a 0%.
exactly.
Or
Yep. So we'll have 3 years of accumulation when we go into this, and we're looking to borrow into that as well. It just depends on where we're at and how we'd break that down, if we're gonna go all the way to the west, or if we would cut it off halfway, or what we would do, depending on what that we get for feedback on the actual borrow of that. Because it's gonna be a significant cost. That street it gets used a lot, and the city's grown around that on both sides. A lot of traffic over there, we know what's happening, so pedestrian safety, it doesn't matter how you're moving, we wanna make sure we're safe over there. And there's a lot of people from the county that use that road as well, the township, get out to Highway 10 and coming home too, so.
So does the potential of a bridge on 25 and 10, does that change anything we would do on Edgewood Street?
Potentially it could, you could look at that, so where the church is at right now, Gary Hammer owns a lot on the other side of it, there's a tree line right there. There's one proposal that says 1st Street, stops right there, and it goes like a hard right to go north, and then Edgewood would tee into that. Greg and I have talked quite a bit about that. The reason we're looking at this whole engineering is that, we'll probably know more about where the state's at maybe a year from now, when they do the final phase of that. But the reality is we're probably 10 years out before we would get anything. So that portion of the street, especially if Luann, if you get the grant and you tie Luann up there, at a minimum, you try to come there. But even that section of, it's a rural section. We're not putting stormwater out there, we're not putting curb and gutter out there to collect that storm. So I would advocate to say, I think you're gonna get at least 10 years out of that full street. I would say that you do that, because we know the state, who knows, are they gonna give us any funding for it or not? We don't have $45 million to put that interchange out there. But that'll impact our overall trail and what we're doing, because the request would be to put a separated trail on the overpass as well, and then tie it in with 25. So it'll change that up, but I just don't think anything's imminent. So I would hate to see us delay something.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Over a what if or a might be, or so.
Yep.
So like I said, it's a big ask coming through. There's a few other funding sources that are coming in with this thing. Typically, what we've seen over the last several years, we break apart part of next year's. We've already got it in this year's approval process, so I can start the engineering. So we're not borrowing into. So you'll see that for next year as well. We're pulling some engineering dollars in for 3rd Street and the Autumn Ridge addition as well. So again, by doing that, you guys approve it so we can start using those funds. We'll have an SLA likely coming in the end of September or early October to start doing engineer work for next year's streets already. So we try to look at that 5, 6, 7 year, but we shuffle the deck if we have to, based on what the weather does to our streets. The good thing is, we've got a very good maintenance plan on our streets. You guys have been very generous for us to replace these streets. So our streets are holding up very, very well, and it's a nice methodical approach. The whole goal was, how do we do this thing so we know we've got some funding right now, and then we get in a position so we don't have to bond going forward, so we can just keep rolling this thing, you know, as we play catch up. So we're in a pretty good spot. We got a couple of bumpy years ahead, big spend years, but I think we're in a really good spot. We do keep a little maintenance in there as well. I know Chris is working right now with Aztec. We did some microsurfacing, which we would plan to do again this fall if we can, or right away out of the chute next year on some of our streets. We're gonna go with Aztec. They got a little bit better approach to it and a little bit better application for it. We were a little disappointed in what Farner did. They did an okay job, but it wasn't as crisp as we'd like to see it. But
Was that Hancock?
And yeah. Just, it wasn't as good as we thought it should be, but we've seen this play out very well, that we can prolong some of these roads for 3, 4, 5 years pretty comfortably. Some are getting 6, 8 years out of them to get it going, and we've got some good candidates. So the gentleman that has been to town a few times is very, very knowledgeable, and we'll see some numbers there. But putting those big numbers in some of these will introduce us as well with some of our other big roads, Sherburne South, Liberty. We will probably isolate those and make that as a separate line item, because you got 4 miles of road. Microsurfacing that or overlaying that is still hundreds of thousands of dollars, so. Any questions on what it's a lot of money, we know that, but it's been a very methodical approach to this, and I think we've done a good job of attacking neighborhoods and high travel, try to blend some of our commercial stuff with some of our residential stuff, some of our residential collectors with some neighborhood stuff, put some of the neighborhoods off if it's just local cul-de-sac traffic and stuff like that. So it's worked out pretty well. Next year as well, the Public Works CIP, really the focus will be the parking lot over there, some curb lines and putting the entrance to 3rd Street and then the parking on the other side. So that'll be part of this project, even though it's coming out of their CIP. So we'll add that design factor in this as well.
Well, and we have, I mean, we've had big spend years as far as in the last few years, but we planned for that too. I mean, that was, especially with the unknown of the Sherco coming up in the second half. I mean, that was a plan. It wasn't wasn't a surprise or anything like that. I mean, that was exactly by design.
Yep. And so the next few years too, we're trying to hit that 2028 to then kind of calm things down a little bit. And then you have that systematic approach where you can keep current with it to still a big number, but lesser numbers than what we've experienced over the last several years. Yeah, the big hurdle was that bonding when you put it in play and we're able to tackle, Sherburne South, that put us almost 2 years ahead of our CIP plan because of the economy of scale by doing that whole street at one time. And we saved almost $2 million on that road, so.
Plus we borrowed it at 0.97 interest or some crazy number like that.
It played out well, and it got the city to a very good spot. If people complain about our streets, I give them a couple of roads, whether it's St. Cloud or Big Lake or Monticello, Annandale. Go drive over there and see what you think. Our streets are
But
really
on Lincoln
good.
Avenue, tell me what you think.
Our worst street is better than most of their best streets.
Yeah.
Like I said, last year, the one we get the most complaints on is Central Avenue.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even
ours.
We didn't get that until December, so as soon as we owned it, we're taking care of it, so. And just as a quick update, that will be paved next Thursday. Base pavement will be on there. They'll raise irons on Friday. And then hopefully, the plan right now, unless we get a deluge of rain, the plan is to put wear course on everything by the end of the day, Tuesday the 2nd. So
Nice.
it's coming together.
We got a holiday weekend, you know we're getting rain that weekend, so.
State Fair starts on Thursday, so there's gotta be some oddity coming in too. Lori, am I missing anything, Mark, that we walked through? Okay. So again, finance plays a really critical part with us, is keeping our numbers straight and working on this stuff with our activity codes. So, no, with that, Josh is gonna go through the Pebble Creek, and I may jump up if there's any questions, but thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for the opportunity to talk capital improvements at Pebble Creek Golf Club. So kind of ties in nicely, and I appreciate Phil kind of queuing it up as it relates to the street project, because as we look at 2026 and our team is kind of planning what our priorities, we had a little bit of a confluence of opportunities regarding our major requested project for 2026, which is the $185,000 to PVC line the ponds on your print out there. The closest to 23 heading north, you got our hole 10 pond, which is not lined. And then on the very top of your sheet that's circled, that's identifying the pond on hole 4 of the championship course. So as we were kind of looking at the opportunities to align a little bit with the streets projects, but I think the main thing I want to place the importance on, or there's a few points, but we're running our wells and pumps pretty much around the clock to support the aesthetic water level of those two main water features. The pond on 10 runs 16 hours a day with a portion of that going to keep the water level in 10. So, you know, it's important to maintain those aesthetics, because we're seeing significant water loss. We do have a number of lined ponds at Pebble Creek that we've got, you know, 35 plus years of experience and no problems. Specifically, hole 13 heading north kind of along, we've got those two ponds on the sides. Those are lined and they keep their water beautifully. The donated PVC liner that we got from Northern Metals following that incident, they were very kind to donate theirs that they were using for temporary water retention. We lined the pond on next to 14 green, and we did a lot of that internally, and it's worked wonderfully. So this is really protecting and being good stewards of the property for decades to come as it relates to that. But we're really maxing out our capacity on our wells and our pumps. About just a little less than 50% of the water that we pull from our wells is to support the water levels of hole 10 and hole 4. And we don't want to be in the position where we just let them run dry, because we do have a very popular course that people do appreciate, and that is an important amenity to our experience. So really looking at, you know, and Phil alluded to it, is, you know, as Edgewood is taken on in the 23 work, there's going to be a need to put that stormwater somewhere. And this is probably the most cost-effective manner to support that, as opposed to trying to, you know, pipe it up to Clitty Lake or something like that. So it really is a confluence of opportunity, and it seems like the right time to take this on. And then we'll be in a really good position with all of our water features for decades to come, but also protecting that critical infrastructure for our wells and our pumps by taking a little bit of that supportive load off of it. We've even seen just recently in the last couple of weeks where our irrigation pond, where all of this would flow to and does flow to, has had a hard time resurging after a night cycle, where so we're really concerned about being able to replenish from our well, our irrigation pond, to keep up with the demands of watering the course. And we've had some nice timely rain this year, which has been nice, but as the last few summers have shown, we can go through some pretty drastic droughts as well.
Josh, one thing, we're diverting some water to the BAC too as well.
From our pumps, yes, yep. Yeah, the BAC and the community center. So that's really there aren't a whole lot of projects that we're really proposing for 26, and really, we've done a nice job, and we really appreciate the support of our committees and the council, to get a lot of this critical stuff done over the last few years, positioning Pebble Creek in a really good place, going forward. Yeah, so we'd be looking at that project. That is a real live quote. And we're seeking others, but obviously don't want to get too far ahead of things. I'll pause there, if there's any questions before I move on to the rest of it, because that is obviously a hefty investment.
Any questions on that?
If not, we'll just kind of roll into, so the next spend is our continuation of our cart path replacement. We've completed year 2 of that 4-year phase. We've been working with Hanson Paving over the last 2 years. We're able to accomplish a really quite impressive amount of linear feet within that $100,000 annual budget. We're working on kind of getting that lined up for next year and just seeing if we're experiencing any changes. But it's looking like the continuation into the 3rd year to complete the championship side of the property next year, and then the remaining in 2027 would take care of all the local 9. So as of the end of 2027, we'll have a nice restart of the clock on all our path work out there, and they've done a really nice job with that part of the project as well. So aside from those 2 things, I do have $20,000 in clubhouse updates for next year. We'll meet with our team and golf committee and kind of identify the highest priorities, but there are a number of areas that could be addressed, specific even our kitchen. A lot of just the tile work on the walls, and some of the tile on the floor we've had some issues with. It's original to the property, so you get cracked tiles when we do MDH health inspections. Those are always noted to repair those. So, but we've got some bar stools, things like that we're looking to address. But so leaving a little bit for the clubhouse in the 26 plan is kind of what we identified, and then we'd work through golf committee to really prioritize what those projects are to bring to you next year. Really just focusing on 26. I don't know if you had any questions about 27 or 28 specifically. Really, as we get to 27, we've got the end of the cart path replacement project, 25,000 dedicated to that critical irrigation infrastructure, and then our tractor, unfortunately, is getting to the end of its life, so we're looking at our tractor replacement in 2027. But so it's a little bit of a higher year in 26, and then it does kind of ebb off a little bit lesser spend or request that we've had up until this point. And then on the second page where it kind of runs down, this plan does identify everything that we have coming up, but also keeps us in a net positive position in our capital fund.
Any questions from anybody for Josh? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
The other item related to the budget that staff would like some direction on is a police sergeant position. This has been brought up to both the Personnel and Police Committee. I did print off some data that Chris had collected and left it at the place on the dais. And so we're kind of at the point where we would like to know, is it something that you're looking to fund for 2026 or not? A full year fund, a half year fund? Once we understand, get some direction from the council, we'll come back for the September 2nd meeting and have the impact of that on the budget and levy. But we just wanted to have a discussion to see if that is a position that the council wanted filled. Chris is here to answer any questions you have.
There's supposed to be, should be somebody in charge if he's gone, right?
Yep.
How do you do that without having a promotion to someplace along the line? we're looking for a sergeant rather than lieutenant position.
Correct, yep. After we evaluated the staffing, it was decided that a sergeant was more appropriate for the number of officers that we have.
How much money are we talking about?
Mark, how much?
We talked about two positions. It was roughly 250,000 with the benefits, the full package for the two positions.
Right, so we do plan on bringing an officer on board before the end of the year. That'll come to
We're
the
gonna do
council.
that anyway, right?
Yes.
Correct.
That's the investigator spot?
Well, it's an officer. The investigator side of it would be an assigned role for somebody within the department, so not necessarily the person we're hiring.
Correct.
The sergeant position was about 141,000 on an annual basis. That would be the impact.
So that would be another body that we would hire.
Correct.
Rather than
Correct.
Then
promoting
moving,
within.
right.
Yeah, 141 would be an officer getting a slight step, you'd hire, if you hired somebody on staff, kind of where they fit within the pay scale, kind of middle of that scale where the sergeant was, assuming a family healthcare benefit, at least for that. So there's a range, depending on where that sergeant would come in. But that's what's assumed, a family benefit, kind of right in the middle of that pay scale.
Well, I'll just share what I shared at police committee, which was I totally agree that we do need a sergeant position. Chris would like to go on vacation. He'd like to go camping. He'd and just this would be somebody that would really focus on the off hours. If you remember Sergeant Lawson, that was what we had with Sergeant Lawson, where he worked a lot of
Nighttime.
yeah, like the 4 to 2 or something like that. So I can totally support that. The part I have an issue with is we would be adding another body. We'd be adding more patrol hours without really a movement in the numbers. And so I'd like to see a sergeant worked in with the existing staff, I guess, where without adding the staff, the additional shift. So we'd have 3 people on. If we were to go with a sergeant, we'd have 3 people on at sometimes, and without a increase in the numbers, increase in the traffic, I guess I would.
Well, when Brent left, Chris was promoted, so his position is empty. So maybe I'm not following, but it doesn't look like we're hiring any more bodies, we're just replacing one.
It would be an additional body because we added or are going to add an officer.
Oh, okay.
So it wouldn't be all the time, because there'd be times when it'd be 2, and and there's also times when it would be for if somebody has court, somebody has time off. I mean, there's flexing in the shift where it's not gonna be 3 people all the time, but there are plenty of times when it will be. And that was where I had the most, with at least the plan that was proposed. I can totally understand, we need a sergeant. But just adding another body, maybe going that way of doing it, I guess that's where I would like to see us do it in a different way. I can't quite say what that way looks like though, but that's where, I don't fully understand the shifting, how everybody shifts and all that lineup either, but I just be able to go to the taxpayers and say we don't have, the call volume hasn't really shifted that much. Now, the call volume would increase if you put another, person out on the road, if somebody's out there writing more tickets, technically, the numbers will go up, but in order for us to justify currently, when we've had pretty close, numbers year over year, to say we need to put another, person on staff, I can't get there, I guess.
Well, I don't know about adding another person on staff, but I do agree that we need to have a sergeant.
Chris, would that even though be an option? Yeah, come up to the podium. Like if you were to hire within the staff we already have, because we'd be kind of in the same boat
Yeah, and that's,
that we're in right now.
yeah, and I discussed that a little bit, because this was brought up by Rick too, is, hey, if we look at taking somebody that's already on staff and assigning them to the sergeant role, I'm not exactly sure how that scheduling would work out, but theoretically, we'd take a power car that we have right now, which we have 2 kind of consistent sides. We have a 6 AM to 6 PM, a 2 to 2, and a 6P to 6A. And if we were to take probably from that, we couldn't take a AM or PM guy because that wouldn't work. So we'd take one of those middle shifts, and then we want them to be able to work with all of the officers. The supervisor is going to be in a position where they're our supervisor for the night guys that I don't see, so I want them to be working with each of the officers, being able to provide that supervisory level, fill out, accurate annual performance evaluations for people that, I don't get to see. So if we went with something where we hired internally, the problem we'd run into a little bit is if we're swapping that person side to side, the nights that they were off work, or on the opposite side, that side would then run actually less people. So they'd just have a day car and a night car. So now we're running one car. So if somebody wants to take time off, or last night's a great example, our night shift called off, like overnights. So it's like, we gotta figure it out. So we flexed our middle shift to night shift last minute yesterday, and he worked overnight to cover that. So my concern a little bit is that.
And that's a 12 to 2 car? What's that power shift?
Power 2 to 2.
2 to 2.
Yep. So my concern with doing it, it's possible, and it's done. When Jason was here, it was a little different because we only had a day shift, night shift, and so Jason was our power car. So he floated to both sides. At that time, we're using more part-timers and things like that to try to cover time off. Whereas now we've gotten to the point where we're pretty good with filling time off with the people we have on shift for night shift to flex. So if we were to take from the inside, then one day a week or a couple days a week, if that person was on the other side, they'd actually be short and they'd just be 1 and 1. Otherwise, if he's on that side that has the power car, now we're in the same position a little bit where we're actually running 3 those nights. So it kind of just spreads it out a little bit, where some nights would be short and then some nights would be heavier, and then other nights would be exactly the same how they are right now. So
Do you have somebody qualified that you would look to promote?
we would open the hiring up externally. So whether or not people internally would apply, I'm not sure. I know that people have expressed opportunities to move up, as a lot of us do in our career fields. They want to have steps, but we've talked about it, and that would be something that would be opened up externally and see, if anybody
It
else
would
would
be
have an interest.
basically the same thing that we did as with the chief. Just a different scale.
Sure.
Because the main concern is we have one squad on right now from 2 to 6. It's like, that's basically.
That was-
Not,
Yeah, so that's correct.
supervised. Well,
And
none of them are, but.
to Rick's point, for those that haven't been involved in some of the meetings, he's referencing our call for service numbers, and he's not wrong in that. Our calls for service haven't grown so exponentially that we need to add a body per se. Now, I know Brent's been trying to add a body for 2 years, I think now, right? Just to try to get it better for us to cover shifts. But with this backfill, going to that investigative patrol position, then this sergeant spot would kind of fill that last little niche area. And the 2 to 2 would then, the sergeant would be effectively a 4 o'clock car. So it'd give us 2 more hours of double coverage, of having somebody around for those 2 to 4 time frame if things should come up. The numbers aren't huge at that time of morning, but we would, again, they would be proactive and they'd hopefully be out doing their jobs. So it's gonna produce
Like a
some
good
things.
example is last Thursday. You had one on.
Yes,
They were gone for 7 hours.
they were gone out of town for 7 hours.
So it's just things, you know what I mean?
And that was a
It's not
time
all
off.
the time, but.
And we have a ton of that, a lot of time off that we're getting filled, so I can't tell you in the last 2 months that I've had a 2-week pay period where our night shift or power shift hasn't flexed somewhere to cover time off as it is. So, not that this sergeant position's in a position to cover that, but we would have, that extra nighttime availability now we'd only have to scramble to cover from 4 to 6 AM, which, is a weird time to cover, but it's easier than 4 hours, so. A lot of times the day shift officers will be willing to come in a little bit early in those cases.
Other comments from the council? I'm kind of, I'm kind of where Rick's at. I think we need, our structure needs to be something, and I'm glad that we're looking at a sergeant and not
Lieutenant.
a lieutenant piece. It's hard for me to picture what Becker looks like with 3 squads on, you know, on one side. That just seems to me at night that would be a lot. So I'm.
No, that's why it's that hard. It's like you get it, yeah.
It's hard to vision. It's hard to see when we have an investigator, how that changes and how everything works, because we've just had so much change.
I like the investigator position too. I remember when we first brought that on, I agree with that as well. I mean, that, you know, moving somebody into that role, I mean, that you got somebody on night shift and they gotta call, you know, follow up on a case. You don't call them at 2 in the morning, you call them at 8, 9 in the morning the next day, and that's where that, you know, that's where the investigator, does a lot of that stuff. It's during the day hours. You gotta follow up another agency, it's gonna be during the day hours. So I get, having that as well. I just, just the 3 people.
Chris, question for you. Is there time between now and September 2nd to look at what it would look like if it was an internal thing, so we would have a comparison?
What do you mean by that?
Adding the sergeant position without a body. Is there because I think people have talked about it, but we've said we don't know what it.
Oh, how it would change the schedule? Like how it would?
Yeah, I mean, I can look at ways that we'd schedule that out and what that would look like for personnel on. Yep. And I just want to hint, just real quick, want to touch on something that first came up when I think I brought it first to police committee. And just so that people are kind of aware on the discussion of the fact that I was promoted and that left a hole, and how we got to an investigator, patrol investigator, and where we are now. So I just want to quick highlight that. I approached the police committee wanting to fill that position that we opened up, and assign somebody as an investigator, because we have a huge need for that right now. Our day shift officers are spending way too much time in the office working these cases, and they're not out on the road being proactive. And I think that's something that the community wants. So that was a huge need. And then additionally, we have in my opinion, a need for supervision at night, because we have none. And especially with hiring, and right now, as we speak, you know, our newest officer will be completely new to policing, and he'll be probably likely on night shift. And now we've got somebody with no, you know, limited experience without that supervision. So those were my 2 big pieces that I really wanted to try to focus on for the department moving forward. The question then became, well, if we have one, which one would you want more? Was kind of how Rick put it. So in that case, the benefit of that investigative role and getting cops back out on the street during the daytime when they're most visible, weighed a little higher for me than even the supervisor. And that's why we are where we are now, where we'll fill this role, hire on. Once that person's hired, the officer role, we will assign somebody as that we call a patrol investigator. So it's not strictly investigations. They're gonna be a patrol investigator, so they'll still respond to calls to back up the day shift. They'll still be available to help cover shifts, things like that. So that fills a bunch of different needs for us daytime wise. And then the second ask, then that's how we got to asking for a sergeant position, instead of just saying, hey, why aren't we taking a lieutenant? You left and now we're filling a sergeant. That's how we got to that.
Greg, have we provided enough direction?
No.
You're like, absolutely none.
It's kind of a rhetorical question, but
Now, I can provide ideas, but I don't know where we're at for a timeline with
budget.
budgeting and the process that would be.
I do hear a concern about the number of squads. Christie, don't go away. And the impact of adding this other body. I wonder if it's possible, if you were to look back for, let's just say the last 2 or 3 months, had you had a sergeant position, what would it look like in terms of number of cars available throughout the day? We may find that 3 cars is not really that often. It's gonna happen, but maybe it is really 2. Would that help? Because then we're not talking theoretical. Let's look back and say, what do we actually do? And if we plug this person into the schedule, what is the impact in terms of staffing?
Yeah, to get a visual of, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
What,
Is that even
how
possible?
would we, what,
I think, yeah, I could take a look at our schedule that we have now. I have historical schedule of like vacancies that we needed to fill, and then I could probably use that to assess how many hours would we have had covered had we had somebody in a sergeant role on the schedule we had discussed in police committee and personnel.
And you had mentioned, I think, at a meeting, Chris, your philosophy behind it is not to have the sergeant become a cover car, though.
Correct.
Correct.
Yep. Cause I want that, we need that supervisor, and I don't wanna use them as a cover. Now, are there cases where that might be our option? Like last night was a good example. Last minute call off for an overnight shift, right? That's like my worst nightmare, right? Cause we have to provide 24-hour coverage. So I send a message out to the part-timers we have, all of the off-duty officers offering overtime because we need it covered, and got no responses, right? So fortunately, I was able to get a hold of our power car somewhat soon enough, so then he adjusts his whole day to try to sleep longer, and then he was able to fill in. But, so, we have a lot of that type of situation where if something comes up, hey, I need you to stick 2 hours, right? Cause we'd be there till 4 in those days, but yes. I don't wanna get in the habit of having them be our road coverage, cause I want them to be working with people to supervise and to provide that guidance.
So that question comes back to what Greg said, is it still appropriate then if we're doing a 3-month look at how that would do it, but that's not how we envision that being used, is there something different we need to look at for the coverage piece? And again, I don't know if that even exists.
I think that what it could show, just to kinda, I guess, work off of Rick's concern of the 3 cars and the look of having, that many cars on in Becker at a time, we could look at how many times that would happen, right? Compared to, cause like I said, I don't have any, the last several months and even moving forward right now, I got 214 hours in time off requests in the last like 3.5 weeks. So it's I shouldn't say rare, but it's very common to not have 2 cops on at night. We're very frequently either night shifts off or our power cars are off. So the number of times that we actually have 3 isn't always as, a full-time thing. So I could look at that on our schedule and say, hey, these are the nights that we have would have had 3 cars on. These are the nights we would have had 2. These are the nights we would have had 1, because that's still gonna happen. If it's a night that the sergeant's off and our power guy takes off, we've got 1 car still in Becker. So that's where it gets a little bit difficult is, yes, there are going to be nights where there are 3 cars in Becker. There's also gonna be nights where we have 1 car day shift, 1 car night shift, that we're running 24 hours, with a single car, so. But if that's something, like I said, I'm open to trying to provide anything that you would want to see, and I've had that discussion with police committee too. If there's things that I can provide that you have questions on, I'll provide them, and we can kind of go from there.
I think as we think about it, we all have a hard time visualizing it. So
Yeah.
if you provided what Greg asked for, then have we given you enough direction?
How many part-timers do we have?
We have 3.
What would filling one of those as a full-time, making one of them full-time rather than part-time? And only,
Would any of them wanna be full-time?
which we've talked about before.
Yep.
having-
And
One of
so-
our 3 isn't even, doesn't.
Well, and so this is the problem we run into a little bit with part-time, and I don't wanna go on a big tangent, but 5 years ago and beyond, our part-time officers were people that, had other jobs or they wanted to get into law enforcement, so they would come in and they'd work an abundance of hours. And because of the current hiring issues in law enforcement where there's so many jobs available and not enough people to work them, we just don't have part-timers that are able to do that. So our part-timers consistently are people who have full-time day shift jobs, which, as you can imagine, last night, hey, I need a night shift covered. Well, I work my normal day job during the day, so our part-time is less available. I mean, I think that where we're at now with hiring on an assignment of an investigator role, We have two sides of the schedule, a power and a night, which has been working pretty well with flexing. And then having, again, that supervisor that theoretically could be somebody to fill in a dire need. Our reliance on part-time is gonna pretty much consist of weekend day shift for the most part. And that's hopefully when they'll have off. And the thought process for me moving forward is I'd like to move away from that, having the part-timers altogether. That'd be great. We just run a full contingent of full-time officers. We've got enough on the schedule on each side that one person's allowed to take off. If they're already off, you're not off, and it solves our problem. But it's tough. The part-timer thing is so
But none
tough.
of our part-timers would be interested in a full-time position rather? No.
Yeah, they didn't even want to apply for the full-time officer position just because they have their own things going on, so. So I can do some digging. I can take a look at our schedule. I'll go back about 3 months and I'll put together a spreadsheet showing the days of the week, how many cars would have been on day shift, power, or, hours of day. And then, I can get that out to council as soon as possible.
Yeah, can you show us what was actually on and what you would have preferred on, or
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be a preferred on, just cause,
what would have maybe scheduled on?
yeah, so what.
The full,
Sure.
what a full
Sure, if,
contingent would look
yep,
like?
so, yeah, so that's kind of what I think I meant, is it'll show, here's if we had this sergeant working the shifts that we discussed, and, they were on that rotation, here's how many times we'd have, we'd have 1, 2, 3, and if we were shorter or over on cars, I guess you could say.
How would that be affected if you would have had an investigator position on during that time?
None. As far as the hours. So the day shift won't be, that won't affect it at all, just because the day shift investigator side doesn't really, once you get to that night shift, it doesn't really correlate over for covering or shifts or anything like that. Cause they'd be opposite, so your investigator would be leaving at 4 and your sergeant would come in at 4, so kind of a separation there.
Might I suggest this as an alternative? Mark brought up a good point at the personnel committee meeting that everything right now is kind of new in the police department. Chris is new. We're gonna have a new officer come on board. There's a lot up in the air. And September 2nd is gonna be here in 2 weeks, and the 15th is gonna be less than a month when you have to decide on a preliminary levy. Would it make sense, this could buy a little longer time period to look at, that as we prepare the preliminary budget for you for the 2nd, that we look at funding the position for half a year for 26. You would have then until December for the final levy to say either we're not gonna fill that position. You would have you could then just drop the budget by, half the amount, but you still have the option open to explore it all the way through next June if you wanted to.
Why would you do a half a?
Well, it would give Chris a chance to get the department where he wants, go through his probationary period, bring the new officer on
By the time you get
board.
the new officer on behalf.
We're gonna add the investigation part to that. All that stuff can be figured out. We give it time to figure out, and it buys time. And we don't have to scramble next June and say, I guess we really do wanna hire this, but we don't have anything in the budget.
I like
And you really have till December to make your decision then.
Yeah, well, and you could even make the decision
You could go full,
here too. I
sure,
mean, if it's,
Right.
you could
You could.
just,
right.
Why would we wait until July?
Just for the reasons I said, that let Chris learn the job, put his stamp on the department, go through his probation. The other FTO officer, when he comes on, it's gonna be a 3-month process. Chris will be heavily involved in the FTO of a sergeant. That's not gonna be left just to the officer, so he'll have more time there. So I think with everything going on, it might just be a good time to just let things work out and give the council adequate time. This way you're not rushing to make a decision on the 2nd of September.
So the concept behind that was, I said, in my experience, a lot of change at once, people rush into things, and I think, Chris, you need supervisory help, not that you need help, but that there needs to be something there. But you're adding a new chief, we're gonna add a new investigative position,
new officer.
new officer. And then if you throw a sergeant on top of it, it's really kind of four things all at once. And then how do you, do we really know what that looks like? We're having a hard time envisioning what it looks like with one, and when you look at that, it might allow us to look at some more stuff, to have Chris say, hey, I've discovered this works.
Yeah, I like the idea of putting it in preliminary, because we can always drop it.
Can drop it in December.
But we are bringing one on for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
That one already came,
okay.
And I know when we, you had brought this up at police committee and, I was like, well, let's just see the whole year. And I guess if we put it this way, I could go along with that. I mean, I can, give us longer to discuss it. I can we can meet separately and we can, I can kind of maybe understand the scheduling better. And I think that's what you're gonna give to everybody. So, so I could go along with that.
Now I have enough direction.
Why didn't you say that in the first place?
That's why we discuss it.
You're satisfied now?
Anybody have any questions for me?
I still think work on that other thing. I mean, just.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
No, this isn't, I'm not just gonna be done.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've made it clear to you guys, I'll try to do whatever I can if there's things I can provide. Get that to
So
you.
when you asked me the other day, you're like, what could I provide you? That, to better understand the scheduling.
Sure, yeah, no, it's a good idea, cause I'll try if I can. Yep, that's something I can definitely do.
All right.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, roundtable. Becky, Mike, Robin?
No, I don't think so.
No. I had to think, I thought I had something, but
I had two quick things. We did the mayor's nonprofit roundtable 2 weeks ago. 30 organizations showed up. Really cool. At the end, we were able to hook somebody up with someone who has a family member with a traumatic brain injury, was able to get some help from one of the nonprofits the next day. They sent me an email and said that was like life-changing. So we're working on that. Just looping back, Greg had provided an email, the local government roundtable. We solved a bunch of problems. Not problems. We identified a bunch of opportunities, but also have some tangible results from that. So we're gonna meet again in October, but thank you to the public works staff, Greg, everybody that worked. They were able to accommodate the school on a bunch of stuff that's gonna really help them, which serves us all better, so thank you to those people. Forgot to thank Dick Sobernick during the meeting. He provided some arrow holders out at the new archery park. So thank you, Dick, for doing that. And thanks to Karen from EDA, we did a couple business retention visits. We visited Darter Plastics, who was the first business in the industrial park after Excel, obviously. And we visited Current Accessibility Solutions, who's in the old American Hometown building, if you've been here long enough to remember that. So thanks to her. That was really good. And Jacob and I talked today, and we're gonna look at maybe doing an industrial park roundtable, since there's quite a few new owners over there and some new things happening, so. And post office.
Why?
These are short. You know me. These are pretty short. So Senator Klobuchar is now co-signing the letter with Senator Smith, asking for clarification on a number of items, which included why the post office sent a press release to Channel 5 stating that they're moving operations to Monticello and didn't notify us. I lost my mind and sent an email that was not very nice, so people are aware. So we're hopefully getting a little more movement there. Thanks to Phil, we met at the community center and looked at a possible location for the PO boxes. They won't put them indoors, don't ask me why. So we looked at and made a proposal of a spot outdoors that we could pour some concrete and maybe host the PO boxes
Yeah.
because I was originally under the guise of, we'll provide a spot if you sign a lease. But I've had business owners reach out that do work with like DHS, and if they don't have a PO box, they're saying they have to leave the city.
Whoa.
Because they have HIPAA related mail, they send out a lot of, things to people with disabilities, so there's no sense, like,
That was one of the things that I was thinking of when I first heard about this, was there's businesses that rely on the post office being here.
Darter said today, they have acquired quite a few companies and they do a lot more shipping, but they do it through the post office. And they're like, this is gonna be a huge pain, so we're doing what we can.
We're at the community center. I'm just concerned about traffic when that other building opens up. I mean, there are days I can't get out of my neighborhood hardly, and if,
Yeah, it's
I
kind of
just don't know where.
It's kind of outside the community room right now. There's a fence line there that has rock. So the proposal would be to put some concrete in there, which post office would pay for, and then we would not have that maintenance issue in the future. But it would be people just getting their PO box. It wouldn't operate as the
Right.
retail.
I'm just, I mean, are there 50 boxes or?
150 roughly. Cause they need room for 25-ish units, and there's about 8 units. So,
It's 150.
okay, then thanks. English teacher here. So, we're just, I mean,
For the time being too, people can get PO boxes at UPS too.
they
I mean,
can't.
until,
The biggest thing is, there's companies that have to redo their website, their letterhead,
Oh,
their
yeah.
business cards, and it's a
No,
huge
everything,
expense.
your
Oh,
check
I know.
points, everything, cause I
Sucks.
just moved my business and it's
Yep.
nightmare.
not just a little nightmare.
Yeah, and when you're working with like the DHS and the
That's why I don't wanna
feds,
do a PO box.
all your applications and certifications and licensure are tied to your address, and when that changes,
Anybody who does online e-commerce, that'll
Yep.
be tied to a specific address. If that changes, you gotta go through all of your,
It sucks.
PCI certification again. That's, yep.
I just wish there was a little more out of the way place. I just think that could get congested, but it is what it is, and hopefully it's temporary, and I'm
Do they
glad
put
you
a shelter?
think they're gonna pay for the
No.
concrete.
well, that's part of it, and Greg brought up a
Which
good point.
area does it require for that?
Every standalone unit is 34 inches, I believe, wide by like 16 deep, 14, thank you, I know we looked at it the other day. And
But
then
you want a
it's,
bigger slab though, right?
well, what we would do is take the boards off the fence posts and put these CBU units between the fence posts where we could anchor them. Cause they need to be anchored, so you can't do it on asphalt. So that wipes out about every spot we looked at. I had a bunch of them identified and feels like none of those will work because they're asphalt. I'm like, all right. Glad I drove around town looking for that, but, so I don't know what the other option is, to be honest. It's, originally, Colorado Greg told me, hey, find me a spot. If you need to pour a little concrete, I'll authorize that, we'll get it done. I promptly sent him a picture and the proposal, and he said, all right, I'll work on getting approval. And I'm like, you told me you could approve that. Well, apparently now he can't do that. So,
Keep working. Your tax dollars hard at work.
that's what we know. There was questions, that's why that went longer, by the way. He says. All right, anything else? All right, we'll be done with the executive session at 6:38. Thank you, everybody. Bill, I have a question.
You got 1 minute. Mark, I got a question.
I'll hustle.
The pen test.
Yeah.
So talked a little bit, start talking to some folks. We should probably, three of us should probably sit down and talk about the scope of what we do. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do the entire city for $25,000. We probably wanna sit down and make sure we know the scope of what we would really like to do.
Best bang for the buck.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, because like, for instance, say Pebble Creek, I would say no, because with the 4-up system is not ours, so would that be out of scope anyway? So, and that's the biggest driver out there, you know, so, and we can't even touch that. So, that one probably not gonna get a lot. You know, you say, well, what are the areas, probably SCADA and probably here, or what I was, in SCADA, we would have to coordinate with the vendor, cause we can't, anything that's